Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from OnlinePhotographyTraining.com. Welcome to my video series, Mastering the Nik Collection. Several years ago, the Nik Collection of plugins was the #1 set of plugins for Photoshop and Lightroom. Cashing in on their success, they sold off to Google. Google marketed the suite for a couple years with a few updates. Then they announced that they would not be updating the software any longer, and they made it free to download. Around that time, I did a set of training videos on the software that proved to be very popular. Recently, the company DxO purchased the rights to the Nik Collection and announced that they would be developing and updating it. Although it's no longer free, it is nice to have a caretaker for this software because it is very good. With all the good things happening with Nik, I decided to update my training videos on the product. This new series will be more in-depth and thorough than the previous series. Please be aware that I have no affiliation with the company. I'm not being paid by them to do these videos, and if you purchase the software, I will not be making a commission on the sale. With that said, if you could do me a favor, if you like these videos, please click the thumbs up button and share them. Finally, if you can make a donation, I would greatly appreciate it. That info is in the description below this video, along with a link to my Code of Ethics statement. Let's get started. In this episode, we're going to continue our discussion of Viveza 2 by Nik Software. I'm going to demonstrate how you would use Viveza 2 as a Nik plugin. And along the way, I'm going to answer some of the questions I've received about Viveza 2. And one question I did receive is, someone was wondering, well, really, what's the difference between Color Efex Pro 4 and Viveza 2? They seem to do similar things, just in a different way. And that's true. They affect, the contrast, color, structure of your image. Both of them do. But in my opinion, Color Efex Pro 4 is more powerful, more versatile, and really more effective across all different types of images than Viveza 2 is. Personally, if I was going to use one plugin over the other, I would use Color Efex Pro 4. Where Viveza 2 comes in handy is if you need to make a local adjustment or a selective adjustment on a very specific part of your image, and you need to do it relatively quickly, and that adjustment is you're adjusting light, structure, and contrast, then you're able to get into Viveza 2 and with a control point, selectively adjust that area of your photo. In my opinion, control points work a little better than the masking tools that are available in Lightroom. So if you're in Lightroom and you're using a brush to, let's say, brush in some contrast or something, and you want it to be applied to a very specific area, there are some masking tools, especially in the latter versions of Lightroom. Since the Creative Cloud versions came out, they've enhanced the masking options for the local adjustments. That is the brush, graduated filter, radial filter. But in my opinion, they're still not quite as good as control points. Control points do a little bit better of a job. So you're better able to select the exact area you want with a control point, in my opinion. So that's why you may want to use Viveza 2. Now, we're in Lightroom, as you can see, and we're going to send this image over. Typically, I would do some processing in Lightroom and then send it over to Viveza just to do that selective adjustment. But for this demonstration, so I could better show you more functionality of Viveza and give you an idea of what its limitations are, for this image, this is really just the raw file. All I did to it was lens corrections. So there's no other adjustments to this image at all. And we're going to send it over now to Viveza 2. And when you're in Lightroom, there's 3 different ways you could do that. You could go down here to the film strip and right-click on the little postage stamp view and go up to Edit In, and then in this case down to the bottom to Viveza 2. You could get to the same menu by right-clicking right on the image itself, then going down to Edit In, and then down to Viveza 2. Or you could go to the top photo menu and go down to Edit In, and then go down to Viveza 2. And when you do either of those three methods and pick Viveza 2, you'll come out with this Edit Photo with Viveza 2 app dialog box. Now, Nik Software does not work on RAW files directly, so it's going to have to convert it to a file format that it can use. So because this is a RAW file, I do not have the option to edit a copy or to edit the original. Those are grayed out. If this was a TIFF, JPEG, or PSD file, those would be active and you could choose one of those. So my only choice is to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. So it's going to create another file. Now, the file format we could choose between three different: TIFF, PSD, and JPEG. Typically, I suggest you use TIFF. It seems to work best in any Nik plugin, and a TIFF file is as close to the RAW file as you probably could get. PSD probably is too, and JPEG isn't. JPEG won't have the color depth and contrast and the light latitude that any of the other two do. So I suggest you use TIFF. That's the default. Then we have color space. You're going to have at least three. You'll have sRGB, Adobe RGB, and ProPhoto RGB. Depending on your monitor, you may have a fourth one. In this case, because I'm using an Apple iMac, I have that option of Display P3, which is an Apple color space. Typically, being a color space is kind of like a box of crayons, with an sRGB being the smallest box of crayons, maybe a crayon box with 8 different colors in it. ProPhoto RGB, on the other hand, is the biggest box of crayons, so you have the most colors available to you. And they are in order here, with sRGB being the smallest color space, Display P3 being next, Adobe RGB being the next. It's the second largest or third smallest, whichever way you want to look at it, and ProPhoto RGB the largest. Personally, I always use the largest. I want to have all the colors possible. Just be aware that your monitor probably isn't going to be able to display all those colors, but at least they're there. And then when later I want to print the image, they're available for my printer to display or to duplicate. Bit depth, you're usually going to want to use 16 bits per component. That's going to give you the image with the most data in it, basically the most colored data, and that's what you'd want to use. Now, resolution, don't go any smaller than 240, and by default with Nik Software, it's going to show 240. Most people nowadays say that the resolution should be at least 300, so I suggest you put 300 there. If you're using an Epson printer, put 360 there. Epson recommends that resolution for their Pro printers should be at least 360. So it's up to you. Put at least 240 there. I'll put 360. And as far as my TIFF file, I'm not going to use any compression at all. So it's going to be a relatively large file, and of course it's going to take up space on your hard drive. When you're ready, just click Edit. Now it's going to create that TIFF file, so it's going to take a second. Now we're in Lightroom. Lightroom is creating the TIFF file, and it will put it in the same folder that the image, the original RAW file, is in. And if you're in a collection, it will add it to the collection as well. And we're opened up into Viveza 2. Now, typically I mentioned I like to do some processing in Lightroom and then bring it over here just to do some minor touch-ups, but we're going to do everything here. So typically I probably wouldn't do global adjustments. I just jump right into control points and start adjusting something. But quickly, before we begin, I did receive a question from 2 different people about whether or not there's negative control points in Viveza 2. You may remember in Color Efex Pro 4, there's negative control points. So we could remove a filter from a specific area with Color Efex Pro 4. Viveza 2 doesn't have negative control points per se, but by default, when you apply a control point, it is a negative control point. Let me try to explain. I'm going to go to here with the global adjustments, and I'm just going to take brightness all the way up, just for this demonstration. Then I'm going to get a control point, and I'm going to take that control point and I'm going to put it right there. And with this one, I'm going to take brightness all the way down. And let's make it just a tiny bit smaller. Okay, so you can see then I've taken brightness down in this area right here. I'm going to get now another control point, and I'm going to put this one right there, right? So it's on where this control point is affecting. So I'm going to click right there. And now you can see that that control point is acting like a negative control point. I didn't adjust anything. I just applied it right there. So by default, when you apply a control point, it's essentially a negative control point. It's going to reflect whatever global adjustments you've already done. And then at that point, whether or not you want to use it, you can move it and try to get it so it removes whatever adjustment you want, or that removes the control point from the area you want it removed. So I hope that made sense. So I'm going to get rid of these. All right, and then I'll reset brightness to its default position by just double clicking on the slider itself. So I am going to do some global adjustments here. Let's see, I'll bring contrast up a little. I'm going to jump right down to shadow adjustments, and I'm going to open up the shadows a bit. Maybe bring brightness up a touch as well, and add a little saturation. I'm not going to add a lot of saturation here. I'm going to do that more so with control points, and I'm going to add some warmth there. So okay, I'm done with the global adjustments. Now I'm going to add some control points, and I'm going to start at the top and just work my way down. So I'm going to start with the sky. So I'm going to add a control point to the blue sky, and I want to make it more saturated. So I'm going to go to saturation, this slider right here, and I'm just going to increase saturation. Maybe not that much. Okay, that much. So I increase saturation. Now I want to spread this saturation adjustment across the entire sky. So to do that, I'm going to duplicate this control point. And the easiest, fastest way to duplicate the control point is hold the Alt or Option key. And it's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac. While you're holding that button in, click on this little button of the control point itself and just drag one off. So you're dragging off another one. So I'm going to add it there. Now I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key in again and drag one over here. And maybe another one down here. Like that. So I have these number of control points going across the blue sky. Maybe this. Try to bring that one a little more over there. And I like those. So I have these 4 control points that are affecting the blue sky. Now I'd like to group all these control points together, and then if I need to readjust them, I could readjust them all together so I don't have to do them individually. So to do that, I'm going to select them all. So I'm going to click on this top one. I'm going to hold the Shift key in and click on the last one. So they're all selected and active. Then I'll go up here where it says Group, and I'll click there. Now Group 1 is all the sky control points. Unfortunately, you can't rename the groups. If I could, I would write blue sky there. So I know that's the blue sky control points. Now I could come in with this one is active, and that's the representative control point for all 4 control points. So I could come in here, and when I adjust this control point, it will adjust all of them at once. So bring brightness down. Yeah, like that. So that's my sky control points. Now I'm going to work my way down, and I want to add some structure to the cloud. So I'm going to click another control point, and I'm going to add it right on the cloud, like right there. Let's go right. We'll work right to left. So I'll go right there, and I want to adjust the size of this and make this a little smaller so it's only affecting that cloud area right in here. And with this one, I mentioned that I want to add structure. So I'm going to go, I could go to the slider here, but now remember from our last video, where this said global before, which affected the entire image, as soon as I added the control point, and that control point is active, this now says selective. So these controls now will affect this control point. So I'm going to go here to the structure slider up here and move it to the right, and you can see the structure slider down here is moving when I do that. And I'm going to add some contrast too. So I have that there. Now I want to duplicate this control point and put it across all the clouds. So I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key again, and I'm just going to pull it there. There, and I'll come in and resize it maybe in a minute. And there, and then I'll group it and readjust it, because as you can see, it needs some readjusting. Here. Here. So I have now group 1 is the blue sky, then I have control point 5 through 11 are those clouds. So I'm going to group these together. So I'm going to click on group 5, control point 5, I'm sorry, which is the one shown at the top, and hold the shift key in and click on control point 11. So all those control points are selected. As a matter of fact, real quick actually, I'm going to add another one over to the far left. So I'm going to hold that Alt or Option key in again and drag one there also. So I have them all. So I'm going to reselect those. I'm going to click on group control point 5, then go down, hold the shift key in and click on control point 12. Then I'm going to group those by clicking on this group button right there. So now they're all grouped together. I'll take brightness down maybe a touch. Just a little. And I'm going to increase contrast. And I'm going to increase structure a little. That looks good. And I like that. Now let's see where I stand. I'm going to get a before and after. So I'm going to click on this preview button. There's before and there's after. Before, after. So I like what it's how it's coming along. And you're going to have to excuse me a minute. If you watched any of my recent videos, you'll know that we recently got a kitten. And this kitten is the neediest kitten in the world. And he insists on jumping on my lap while I'm working and then jumping on my desk, and he chases the mouse on my computer. So as I move my mouse around, the cat is chasing my mouse around. So I apologize for that interruption. Now, I'm going to add a control point to the sail. The sail's a little dark. I'd like to brighten it up just a little bit. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click Add Control Points, and I'm going to put one right at the top of the sail. And I'm going to adjust it down so it's mainly affecting that top part of the sail there. And I just want to bring brightness up like that. Now I'm going to duplicate this control point across the entire sail. So I'm going to hold that Alt or Option key in again and go to there. And let's see that. Seems like I could maybe make it just a touch brighter. Plus 18. Go back to this one. I'm going to bring brightness a little more. There we go. Then I'll duplicate this to there. Then to there. Then to there. And then to there. So I have this sail a little brighter. I just thought it was a little dingy. So I'm going to group these control points. So I'm going to click on the first one, which was control point 13, and then the last one, which is control point 18, while holding in the shift key. So they're all selected. Then I'm going to click group. And there they are. There's my representative control point for all of them. And I could come in here, and if I readjust any of this, they all get adjusted, as you can see. So we'll turn that up a little bit. Yeah, just a little brighter. I think that adds a little more pop to that sail. And finally, I want to do something with the beach. The beach is kind of dingy looking, and I want to make it a little warmer. So I'm going to click Add Control Point, and I'll go down here to the, let's start on the left for being different. We'll go over here, and I want to go to Warmth, and I want to go to the right. We'll make it warmer. You can see how that did a nice job. I'm going to just resize it a little so it's mainly doing the beach. And then I'm going to hold that Alt or Option key in again and just duplicate this control point across the entire beach. I could resize them as I go if I feel the need to. Oops, I hit the brightness. Didn't want to do that. So let's zoom back out. Excuse my screw up. Let's zoom out one more time. Let's go here. There we go. Now we want to affect the size. Sometimes, depending on where you put the control point in your image, this slider for size will sometimes be on the bottom or top. Sometimes the whole thing will, especially the ones that when you have it on the far right, the control points themselves, the sliders will be on the other side and they'll kind of work backwards. So it kind of keeps you on your toes while you're doing this. So that's that one. Hold that Alt or Option key in again, bring it over there, and bring it over there. So I like that. We warmed up the beach. I could group these, but I'm done. But I'll group them anyway. So I'll click on the first one, which is Control Point 19. Hold the Shift key in. Control Point 23 is the last one. I'm going to click Group. So those are all grouped together. And here's the representative one, which will adjust all of them. And if you want to go back, this is another question I had. When you have control points down, it says selective here. Well, what if you want to go back and make global adjustments? The easiest way to do that is just to come off the image on this gray border and click. And when you click on that, it will switch back to global. So now any adjustments I do will affect the entire image, as you can see. So let's make that a little brighter. Yep, I kind of like that. So I consider this to be done. So now that I'm done, I'll just come over here on this bottom right hand corner. There's a Save button. Click on that. So it'll apply those adjustments to that TIFF file that we brought over here. And it will then transfer those adjustments, or Lightroom will now recognize those adjustments and display them once it's done. Now, it didn't show Lightroom. Lightroom on my computer is already open. It's right here. So just sometimes take a second for it to register here. And sometimes I found you have to kind of click off the image, on the image. And then what you'll find often, if you look right here on the little postage stamp, and I'm glad this did this so I could demo it. You can see it has this up arrow and these like 3 lines. That's indicating that metadata has changed, and Lightroom is going to want to know which metadata do you want to use, which adjustments do you want to use. So click on that, and you're going to want to import settings from disk. So these are the settings basically that Nik did. Lightroom has settings that it recognizes, but what do you want to actually use? Well, we want to use Nik settings. So we're going to import settings from disk. And then once you do that, there's our adjusted image. So there's before and there's after. Now, as I mentioned, I typically wouldn't use Viveza in this manner, doing all these adjustments. I'd prefer to do some of the adjustments in Lightroom and send it over there, and maybe I'd warm up the beach or something, or add structure to just those clouds. Then once you're back in Lightroom, you could do some adjusting here. I usually like to add a dark vignette. Just a little bit, not super heavy. You guys that watch my videos know I just like kind of a subtle dark vignette that helps push the viewer's gaze more towards the middle of the image, and it seems to me be a nice way to finish off the image and make it look more appealing. So that's this episode of Mastering the Nik Collection. In our next episode, we're going to use Nik from Photoshop. And if I receive any more questions, or if I missed any questions in this one, I'll try to answer those questions in that episode. And we're working our way through the Nik collection. So that's it for this video. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.